Welcome back. You're watching HFO-TV, co-sponsored by AMF Capital, the Baljanik Law Firm, the Butler Exchange Group, and the construction firm J.R. Johnson.
Welcome back to HFO-TV. I'm Greg Frick, partner at HFO Investment Real Estate. Today, we're lucky enough to have with us John DiLorenzo. He is partner at Davis Wright Tremaine, and John just won the largest verdict against the state of Oregon, $1.1 billion. So congratulations on that, John. He's also a founder of one of the founders of More Housing Now, which is an organization that we're involved with to fight some of the legislation that's been put in place or trying to get in place in the state of Oregon. So first off, congratulations, John, on the verdict.
Thank you, Greg.
Second off, thanks for taking some time out in these kind of crazy times. I think we're in about month 9 now in this COVID pandemic. So we are socially distancing, hence we're not in the same room, and that's why we don't have masks on. So I just want to clear that up with everybody. So we are just kind of coming in about the middle of November, and I thought it'd be great to get John's take and giving us an update on some of the pending things that have been going on, from some of the legislation as well as some of the legal fights. There's the Owens case, if people remember, if they've looked back before, which was the lawsuit on the city of Portland. Maybe you can get an update on where we are with that, and then we can kind of go in and see what else is happening.
I'm handling a number of cases for property owners and what I like to refer to as housing providers, because
Right.
That's what we do. We provide housing for people. The first case is the one seeking to declare Portland's relocation ordinance as a violation of the preemption statute that exists in the state of Oregon that preempts local governments from enacting rent control. We lost at the Court of Appeals level, and we have a petition for review right now to the Supreme Court. We're asking the Oregon Supreme Court to review, and here's our case. The case is that the relocation ordinance is triggered if the rent is raised more than a certain percentage. It was 10% or more under the original ordinance. Mayor Wheeler has extended that to mean any amount, which triggers the relocation responsibilities.
So in the city of Portland right now, if you raise the rent any amount based on what Wheeler mayor, the new, who just got reelected, any amount, you trigger relocation within the city of Portland.
Right. So if you raise the rent any amount, if the tenant says, I don't want to pay it, you owe the tenant money to relocate. And that ranges from, $1,800 to, multiples of thousands of dollars. Our view is that is an ordinance that controls rent.
Right.
The very purpose of it is to prevent landlords from rent increases. And what else is it other than an ordinance that controls rent? And ordinances that control rent violate the preemption statute. What the city of Portland says is, no, this statute only applies to rent control, as it is understood in New York and San Francisco and the like. The problem is the beginning of the statute references rent control. The operative portion of the statute does control the rent. And so the Supreme Court is going to have to decide whether it's a noun or a verb. And we think we have a really good case that it's a verb. And so if we prevail, we will be able to successfully challenge the relocation ordinance. We're also in federal court.
So before we go to the next one, I've had questions asked for me is when Wheeler did this, went from 10% to 0, does that help the case? Does that make it? It does. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it helps the case significantly because
Right.
now it's obviously an ordinance that controls the rents.
Right. Okay. Okay, that was good, because I've had a couple people wonder, is that going to help move this thing along? Or, I said, well, that's why we're going to get John on the on HFO-TV to kind of let us know what's going.
Yeah. So I don't think Ted Wheeler meant to do that, meant to help our case, but I think the outcome is that it would. The other case that we're currently handling is the Newcomb case, and that's in federal court, and that has to do with the city's screening ordinance and deposit ordinance.
The fair access ordinance that was passed. Okay.
Right, and there are two issues there. The first issue is whether the ordinances violate due process because they are virtually ununderstandable. No one
Right.
can understand exactly what it is you're supposed to do, and it is just an ordinance filled with gotchas. The other issue is whether or not the city has the right to create what's called a cause of action. In other words, has the right to create a state lawsuit that you could file in circuit court to get the damages from a housing provider having violated the screening ordinance or the deposit ordinance. Our view is that local governments do not have that power. And so that's what that case is basically about. And it's in its early stages. We are hopeful that we'll have what are called summary judgment motions filed soon, and are also hopeful we'll have some determination by mid next year on that one.
Gotcha. And that's not one that's not planning on being sunsetted or anything like that. I mean, that's not
Nope.
tied to the housing emergency or anything like that. That's something the city of Portland put in.
Right. In fact, the deposit ordinance is so nebulous and is so punitive that most housing providers are just dispensing with deposits altogether.
Yeah, there's a lot of management companies that in Portland will not charge security deposits just because of that.
Right.
It's so confusing. There's so much liability tied with getting it that they just said it's not worth it. And then It's interesting on that fair access. I thought we would hear a lot more from housing providers. I think COVID has kind of taken over because this, I think, went in place in March. But there's been a lot of consternation about it. So I'm glad we're, trying to do something with that one, because that's as you said, it's so convoluted, and and it has nothing to do with your existing tenants. It has to do with potential tenants, and it's just fraught with landmines for both sides. So it's a little that one's a little scary. So then on that, maybe it was summary judgment. We're thinking a year to get a response on that one. So that's a little bit further behind than the own case.
No, I think we'll have some resolution from the federal court, maybe the first quarter of next year.
Okay. And then what other kind of things are going, from because again, the other thing we're hearing about is this eviction moratorium, the foreclosure moratorium. It's more the eviction moratorium, and not, with property owners and, tenants have not really had to, pay rent. There hasn't been any means testing. I mean, what kind of, we hear a lot about, at what point does this become a taking? I mean, kind of what's your take, and what are some of the strategies you've thought about on that one?
Well, we are now, since March, it's been March, April, May, June, July, August, 8 months into a rent moratorium. And more housing providers are providing services for free.
Right.
Is what's happening. And the moratoriums are created first by the federal government, which requires, in order to avail oneself of that moratorium, they have to actually show that they've been affected by COVID. Then there is a state statute which doesn't require any showing whatsoever and allows anyone who just feels that they can't afford to pay the rent right now to not have to pay rent until some future time.
Right.
Okay? And then there is the Multnomah County ordinance, and the City of Portland ordinance, and a Governor Brown executive order, all of which pile on and which are deferring down the line the ultimate day of reckoning when tenants will owe a boatload of money.
So 5 layers of ordinance, from federal to state to county to city to executive order.
Right. Now, the federal one isn't all that difficult to deal with because it requires people who, truly have a need and who can prove it up to have some leeway.
That's the one they have to sign the affidavit, right?
That's right.
Right. Okay.
But the state ordinance and all the state executive orders and the Multnomah County ordinance and the City of Portland ordinance allow anyone. They allow anyone to basically game the system if they want. And there's no means testing. So someone could move into a $5,000 a month luxury apartment, pay the first month's rent, and probably not a deposit because the deposit rules are so onerous, and then say, hey, I've decided I'm not going to pay rent until the end. All of these ordinances and executive orders together do not allow landlords to charge late fees, do not allow landlords to pay interest. So, if you want to conserve your cash, why not?
There's no penalty for the tenant for not paying it. Yes.
No penalties whatsoever.
Right.
So I'm not suggesting that there are a lot of tenants doing that. I imagine that the bulk of the tenants who are, taking advantage of this, have a real need. In large part because the state of Oregon can't get its act together to distribute unemployment compensation to people who, would otherwise use it then to pay rent. But that's
COVID housing and COVID federal housing money that got allocated to the state's been slow to get out in the state of Oregon. I mean, there was an article in the Oregonian a couple of weeks ago where finally that's been brought to light. I think the state of Oregon at that point was 30 to 40% of the unemployment claims hadn't been processed, and the allocation of the federal COVID dollars. Some counties have gotten it out. Looking at it, was a lot of the rural counties, but some of the major metropolitan counties were holding that money. So we've got tenants that haven't had any relief since March.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it. I think it rises above incompetence. It's now is where it is. But that's a subject for another episode.
Exactly. Yeah.
Regardless, I think what is happening. First of all, from the tenant's perspective, there are a lot of very good people who used to be able to pay their rents, who just can't pay their rents right now, can't even afford to pay this month's rent, let alone the $10,000 to $15,000 they're going to ultimately owe down the line. And so they're losing sleep because they know there will be a day of reckoning. And when there is, what are they going to do? Are they going to file bankruptcy? What are they going to do? What impact is that going to have on their future, et cetera, et cetera?
Because they can't be evicted for the back rent, but they're going to have this on their credit or yes.
Sure. So, I mean, just from their perspective, they're dealing with a great amount of stress. Housing providers, are going to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars each provider. I mean, there's probably over $1 billion out there right now that will never be collected. Any accountant will tell you that once your accounts receivable go beyond 90 days, good luck collecting them. And they rapidly become valueless. I know the state says, well, no, we haven't impaired the obligation of your contract. And no, we haven't taken your property because ultimately you're entitled to go after tenants to get that property. Well, I think that's like saying, look, we've delayed your produce shipment for a month. Don't worry, you'll get it next month. Well, it'll be rotten by the time you get it. Right?
Well, and just kicking all the burden back onto the tenant that's not the goal is not to, that's not really assisting. I mean, in the short term, maybe, but it's not long term. And as I've told a lot of people, as you said, John, a lot of tenants, are trying to do the good thing, but when you have a few that take advantage of the system who, they're getting, they haven't lost their job, they're working from home. The property owner is not able then to help the people that really need to help. I can't help too if I've got 4 taking advantage of the situation. So inevitably it's hurting, the people that need it the most.
Right. So we have a situation where tenants are losing sleep.
Right.
And have no idea how they're going to resolve this. Housing providers are going to get to the point where the state has actually taken their property away from them, this entitlement to rents. The state is going to have to face, ultimately, at some point, there's going to be a takings claim against the state of Oregon for having violated the federal constitution and the state constitutional protections against taking of property without compensation.
And is there a hard line for that, John? Is there a hard line for taking? It's not? Okay.
No, but there'll come a point where experts will be able to convincingly say that this money that is now 6 to 8 months overdue is uncollectible.
Right.
And at that point, I believe there will have been a taking. Then the question is, does the fact that there was an emergency, amount to an exemption, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all of which will be litigated by the courts. But what it means is there will be takings claims that the state will have to defend. So how do you get out of this morass? You got the tenants who have all these issues.
Right.
They don't know what to do. They're leading a very stressful life right now. We have property owners who are out all this money and will never be able to collect it. And we have the state that's going to face takings claims, and they're broke right now too. So how do we handle this? Well, More Housing Now is advocating a bill that will be introduced in the legislature. Senator Betsy Johnson is going to be the sponsor of the bill.
Okay.
We're hoping to bring together more allies. We are shopping the concept with tenant organizations right now. And here's how it would work. First of all, the law would provide that if you are a housing provider and you agree to voluntarily forgive the debt that your current tenant owes you, the state of Oregon will compensate you for that by providing you 3 years worth of credits against Oregon income tax in the future that you would otherwise owe.
So you're offsetting what is owed by the tenant with a tax credit that you can use for 3 years in the future.
Right. And if you don't pay Oregon income tax, you could sell the credits to someone who could use them.
Okay.
So you could create a secondary market for the credits. The advantage to the state is that they would ward off any takings claims, right? Because they will now be addressing this issue of taking personal property from housing providers. And they don't have to use current revenues to pay for it. They will be using future revenue.
And more importantly, the tenants now have not this balance sitting on their
Exactly.
ledger. Yeah.
The tenants don't have to be worried about whether they're going to have to file for bankruptcy, and they'll be able to have a good night's sleep knowing that they no longer owe these crushing obligations. As long as they are able, once things normalize, to begin to pay current rent again. And of course, the advantage to the housing provider is pretty evident too, because the housing provider will be able to get through tax credits money that they would have to chase otherwise. So one of the tenant advocates who has not yet made up their mind and hates the idea of not having income redistribution and hates the idea of the state doing anything for housing providers, has admitted that it's the best idea they have yet.
I mean, what are the tenants groups other? I mean, what is their other? Are they just saying it's a redistribution of wealth and sorry, it's going to be on your nickel? And
yeah.
I mean, there's been no real solution other than just keep kicking the can down and having it bared by the property owner.
Yeah, well, so far, many tenants groups are just pushing rent forgiveness. And they're saying, let the property owner bear the brunt and pay the costs. Well, the problem with that is that it will then give rise to all kinds of takings claims.
Because once governments would say rent forgiveness, I mean, that's going to make the case on a taking claim, I would assume, much easier.
Oh, yeah. So, More Housing Now's proposal is to satisfy everyone, not fully, but satisfy everyone as far as we can.
Right.
Satisfies property owners by giving them at least the bulk, an equivalent of what they could have gotten, albeit over time, right? It allows the state to avoid takings claims and to use future revenues as opposed to current revenues to finance it. And it provides peace of mind to tenants that, are wondering how the heck am I going to pay these crushing obligations? If a tenant can't pay $1,100 a month, how are they going to pay you $15,000?
Right. Well, like you said, this is going on 9 months. I mean, even if it's, it's yeah. So has that been pretty receptive down in Salem? I mean, is that?
Well, it's at its early stages. The bill's still being drafted. It will be discussed during the 2021 session.
Okay, so this is not a short session bill for 2020. No. It's going to be in 2021. So from until then, relief-wise, what are we looking at? I mean, is it just everybody's just kind of waiting and kicking the can down till? I mean, there's no other talk of any kind of relief midterm between then.
Right. So that's basically where we are. I'm hopeful that we will build up quite a bit of support
Okay.
for this potential bill. So my hope is that we can rally housing providers who are watching this video to our cause and contact maybe HFO first, and you can refer them to us.
Yep.
And we'll go from there. And I want you to know I watch all your videos.
I feel sorry for you on that one.
I do, and I think you provide a great service.
Oh, thank you.
The ownership community. So
well, it's been interesting during this time. These Zoom ones they're one sense they're nice because we don't have to physically be together, but right. It's interesting doing it like this. But with everything going on with the housing and like you said, we're trying to put proposals out there that are going to benefit the tenants as well as the property owners and the state for that matter. And again, I think what's been going on since March has just been a kind of a kicking the can down the road, and we'll deal with it later. And hopefully somebody else is going to take care of it. And I just as you said, that's probably not going to happen. There needs to be some real solutions to some of these issues. So okay, well, thanks for doing this. Thanks for taking your time. I know you're busy, and congratulations as well. We'll do this again. And again, if people want information, we have stuff on our website. Please reach out. We can get you talking to the right people. But again, this is in process now. This is something, to get one of these bills through, you do have to gear it up early. So this is not something we're going to wait till February of next year. We've got to get a coalition together, get people together, working together. And as you say, that does cost money to get these things together, but I think it's a good cause and will benefit the housing market in general, from providers to, tenants to the state and everybody else. So thanks for taking the time, John, and we'll do this again soon.
Greg, thank you very much.
Right. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, everybody be safe. Thank you.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Our entire office specializes in multifamily real estate, making HFO the largest multifamily brokerage in the Pacific Northwest. Your success is our passion. Call 503-241-5541 or visit our website at hfore.com for more information.